Hello and welcome to a presentation on the multifactorial causes of behaviour. What causes behaviour? The first phrase that may pop into your head is nature versus nurture, but nowadays you may hear it referred to as nature and nurture to symbolise the interactions between the two. But behaviour is also a lot more complicated than that, so let's take a look at some of the factors that may play a role in the behaviour of a dog. Genetics are believed to play a part in the development of canine behaviour, but figuring out which specific genes influence or cause a particular trait, if that is even the case, is a topic of ongoing research. It's particularly difficult as behavioural traits are thought to be influenced by several genes rather than just one. The impact of the environment is even more complex. In fact, the heritability of most canine temperamental traits has been found to be low to moderate. Despite all of that, genes are believed to act as a framework for an animal's abilities, in other words, what might happen. Genetic influences have been found with specific behaviours in dogs, such as a fear of loud noises, and of course some breed-specific traits suggest a genetic link to behaviour, including ones that have likely been deliberately selected for, such as herding, and ones that haven't, such as flank sucking in Dobermans. So what happens if a specific gene is found to be responsible for a specific trait, and what if that trait is undesirable in modern human society? As Catherine Haupt wrote regarding the search for a canine aggression gene, should all of the dogs with such a gene be neutered, euthanised even? In my opinion, no, because there are a whole host of other factors that may affect the expression of a particular behaviour, even if a dog is genetically predisposed towards it. One big additional factor is the environment. Now that can mean a number of things, including the in utero environment, early life experiences, learning that occurs beyond this point, and even diet and its effect on brain development. So where genes provide a behavioural framework, the environment moulds and shapes said framework, activating certain genes. A well-rounded dog, for want of a better term, is often associated with the following: a stable internal and external environment for the mother, adequate and appropriate stimulation and environmental enrichment in early life, a variety of positive social interactions up until around 12 weeks, the period with the greatest level of neuroplasticity, and finally, appropriate and ethical learning opportunities that allow a dog to reliably predict particular outcomes. Naturally, the opposite has been linked to an increased risk of behavioural issues developing, namely a restricted or unstable environment with a lack of or stressful exposure to stimuli, and the two can interplay as a dog continues to develop. For example, you might be able to make up for a lack of environmental enrichment in a dog's early life by providing that later on. On the flip side, the beneficial effects of an appropriate early environment may be overshadowed by later negative experiences. Interestingly, pet dogs have what Adam McCloskey calls an almost double socialisation process, as they are expected to interact with two species, their own and us, and it's in these relationships that behaviour can also be influenced. A dog's attachment to their mother and the quality of that maternal care can have an effect on the likes of engagement with humans and objects in later life. Similarly, attachment to a human caregiver can have both positive and negative effects in society's eyes, with the loss of said attachment triggering anxiety in some dogs. Aversive training methods used by human caregivers can also have a significant impact, with an increased risk of aggression towards both known and unknown people, and a link to more stress-related behaviours. Of course, humans have had a big impact on the morphology of dogs, put more simply, the way they look, which in turn can have an effect on behavioural output. For example, artificially selecting certain traits has led to herding breeds having a facial structure and sensory abilities that can accurately detect movement, thereby potentially making them more sensitive to things that move. But that's not the only biological factor at work. Internal chemicals such as hormones and neurotransmitters have several links to behaviour, and may have been altered in certain breeds through selective breeding. One such link that is widely talked about is testosterone and aggression. In years gone by, castration was recommended as a way to reduce or even eradicate aggressive behaviour in male dogs. However, not only is it now known that these behaviours can be influenced by many other things, but it's also known that the hormone's role is not that simple, as it can also assist with the dog's confidence in social situations. Health is also an important factor to consider. There are numerous studies demonstrating a link between health and behavioural issues. One of the most cited in recent years is the one on this slide, which found that between around 30 and 80% of hundreds of dog cases referred to a group of behaviourists involve some element of pain. Going back to artificial selection, the evolution and selective breeding of dogs have to be considered when looking at the development of behaviour. While evolution may have resulted in cross-species brain differences, such as larger areas dedicated to olfactory processing in dogs, some behaviours are said to have been lost, or at least adapted, in dogs, via the processes of domestication and paedomorphosis. If you think about the predatory motor sequence and how this plays out in various breeds, you can quite easily see how some elements of the sequence have been hypertrophied and other elements diminished. Breeding trends may even have affected the way dogs perceive stimuli and communicate. A 2018 review of canine communication said artificial selection reduced the social signalling capacity of several breeds, highlighting that brachycephalic dogs have an inability to display different facial expressions, and dogs with permanently erect ears or very short tails have lost part of their behavioural repertoire. All in all, the authors wrote, these factors could make visual communication extremely challenging for some dogs. And that brings me to societal factors, encompassing culture, social norms, and even politics. Dog breed popularity has been primarily determined by fashion rather than function, concluded a 2013 investigation, adding that breeds can become popular despite problematic behaviour. Again, This was focused on Western culture, which a lot of the major studies that we base our knowledge on has been focused on, a culture which has perhaps become associated with irresponsible breeders and the potential subsequent birth of dogs with a higher prevalence of behavioural issues like aggression and separation. Just a few recent headlines, as you can see here, show the kinds of impacts that UK culture may be having on breed popularity, canine behaviour, and even the way people think about dogs in the region. So, what to make of it all? Well, the bottom line is each dog is a product of a smorgasbord of influences, from genetic predispositions and environmental experiences to social relationships and overall health. This behavioural complexity is still not well understood, but having an awareness of each factor is vital to working with and living with other species. In summary, focus on the individual rather than the stereotype. Thank you for listening.